This video was brought to you in part by SD Bullion.
While some online bullion dealers continue to charge $4 over spot for U.S. Mint Silver Eagles, SD Bullion is selling 2016 Silver Eagles for just $2.29 over spot for any quantity. Again, that's just $2.29 over spot for any quantity. If you haven't joined over 25,000 new customers by making the switch to SD Bullion, what are you waiting for? You could save hundreds or even thousands of dollars on your next order. SD Bullion, the lowest prices, period.
Now, one of the concerns with even owning physical precious metals is a lot of people say, well, what if it's confiscated or something like that? Now, this viewer is wanting to know, I'm curious what Jim thinks the odds are of any Western country to either ban the sale of gold or silver, attempt to confiscate gold or silver, or apply an onerous tax to the sale of one or both of the metals. So Jim, do you think anything like confiscation of gold and silver could happen?
It's possible. They might. In fact, there was a story that just got circulated that the United States government just required all the gold owners to fork over their gold and paid out at $42 an ounce. It was a propaganda story, but it was also a very old story because look closely at the details and you see that Secretary of Treasury Geithner had signed the order. So it was not only propaganda, but it was 8 years old or more. They might. And the motive, I looked closely at the motive for that old false story, and it was in order to recapitalize the U.S. banking system. So, you know, that's a real concern, recapitalizing the U.S. banking system. I don't think it's going to be done on the back of private investors. Suppose they did try to confiscate gold in the United States. How many tons do you think they would get after 6 months? You think they might get 30? You know, I mean, get realistic here. You think they might get 100 tons? Do you think they might get 500 tons? Do you think they might get 800 tons? I mean, these are woefully inadequate numbers. How many tons of bullets do you think would be fired? That might be the better question. You know, let's move on. I actually think that from a psychological point of view, they're not going to try to confiscate, because if they did, they would be saying, all these years we've been telling you gold's a dead asset. Now the U.S. government wants it to recapitalize the banking system. Therefore, we admit we've been telling you lies for 20 years, and Warren Buffett is a big liar too, one of our boys. So what they would do is they would light a fire under the gold price. I don't think they want to do that. I don't think their confiscation scheme would be very successful. And I think the confidence game would be a grand disaster.
Moving on here, a lot of people have talked about, what about other precious metals than gold and silver, platinum and palladium, for example. This viewer is wanting to know, in the event of a large societal disruption or black swan that involves a severe downturn in the global economy and an associated nosedive in manufacturing, do you envision platinum and palladium to go down in price while gold and silver go up? Or will these four metals track together?
Very tough question, and the only way I know how to answer it is this. It's really a matter not so much of supply and demand from industry and markets. It's a function of what will be the basis of the monetary system. There's some people who say, well, it's really just going to be gold. Gold will be the basis of the monetary system, and that's that. Real simple. No, I don't believe that. I believe all the Chinese efforts are to make gold and silver together the monetary metals, and there is ample discussion of making platinum also a monetary metal. What does that mean, a monetary metal? It means that if a country wants to have a monetary system with a currency, they must back it up with an asset like precious metals. And the precious metals included in the reserves held by the official government system for that currency will be in the form of big bars of gold, big bars of silver, and big bars of potentially platinum as well. I have not heard of any other metal besides those three. I don't care that palladium and a few other metals are in the platinum group. I don't care. I don't care. Not important to me. You can't say, well, platinum is a monetary metal, therefore palladium will be swapped with it. You know, maybe in contracts, but not in the bank vaults. I personally don't think we're going to see platinum as a monetary metal. So that moves to the question then, if gold and silver, say, I mean, it's my hypothesis, gold and silver, say, are the monetary metals, what will happen to platinum, palladium, and a few other very important metals? I mean, the close cousins to precious metals are platinum and palladium. That's understood. But what will happen to some of the other important metals? Like I always think of the strategic metals, titanium, strontium, and vanadium. Titanium is in military hardware. Vanadium is in your really fine cutting knives for your kitchen. That's vanadium usually. And strontium, not really sure. I think it's in a lot of different things. I don't know what's going to happen to the other metals. What will happen to, say, aluminum and copper? In particular, copper, because it's rumored to have a PhD in economics, and I have respect for anybody who's got a PhD. No, I mean, they call it, Dr. Copper. Okay, well, that's fine, because copper has uses in homes for plumbing, in cars for electronics, and for general electronics all over the place. There's 2 miles of copper wire in every automobile. I mean, that's pretty hard to get around if you say copper's not relevant for industry. Anyway, I believe something very firmly, and this is not a wild, idealistic, goofy, academic thought. I believe that after we see the gold standard imposed, whether it's in trade or banking or currencies, I think first it comes in trade, I think we're going to see a renaissance in the global economy. I think we're going to see a quick response from a true solution. Take a look, for instance, what happened in Iceland after they arrested the bankers, defaulted on debts, fixed the banks, let them start over again. There was an instant recovery. If you get the hell out of the way of an economy with your phony money and your saturated debt and your criminal elites sticking their fingers in their noses with corruption, you get a remarkable renaissance. That's all we need. We need a good, true gold standard. I think it'll start in trade and move quickly into banking. And then like a wave, to top it all off, we'll see the currencies. And the reason I think that is that trade is controlled by the East and the emerging market nations. The debt is controlled by the West, so they want to continue a debt-based system. The East and the emerging market nations, they control trade. They control what is on the ships that arrive in the U.S. ports. So they're going to control what is accepted. And right now they're saying no to the treasury bills. They don't want any more treasury bills. Why? Because we're printing them off a printing press and electronic systems. It's insane what we're doing. We're printing money from QE at the Fed for the global currency reserve, for the foundation of the entire banking system. We're pouring acid on the global financial banking system foundation. It's a guarantee of the death of the dollar.
Now, if we're going to see the death of the dollar, it doesn't seem like valuing precious metals in dollar terms would really make a lot of sense. It seems like, if the dollar went to zero, then gold and silver would be at, infinite dollars per ounce. That wouldn't really make any sense. So it wouldn't really be valuable to, talk about gold and silver in dollar terms, their future prices. Now, this viewer is making that exact point is, the dollar values are probably not going to be a good measure for the future value of precious metals. So they're wondering, what are your thoughts on the value of gold and silver in the future with respect to acres of land? They're saying, what would be the best guess at a per acre price in silver for U.S. land, suburban house, or other non-imported assets?
Well, I think you could translate that question, convert it into saying which is going to rise faster, the dollar value of gold or the dollar value of farmland. I think the dollar value of gold is going to rise the fastest because it's going to be in demand for replacing the entire global monetary system. The whole global monetary system is not going to demand farmland. It'll be important, but I think farmland has already been pumped up a bit. And now the big question regarding farmland is, will it be productive? And I don't know. Who's going to be buying the farm output? Broken economies? No, they need to fix their financial foundation first. And I think that's got to come, as the first step for this remedy. I mean, the Americans are doing everything possible except the right thing. They're trying everything but the gold standard. They're putting patch after patch, new QE, QE3, QE4. We're talking about QE to infinity. We're exporting QE to the BRICS nations of Belgium, Luxembourg, Ireland, Cayman, and Switzerland. We're doing hidden QE. We're doing hidden derivative foundation support. This is crazy. We got to go on the gold standard, and after that, you're going to see a renaissance. It's that simple. I don't think you're going to be doing a lot better looking at farmland, especially like in the U.S. Midwest, when it's already bid up. It's been bid up more than gold. So why do you want to buy farmland that's risen more than gold? Buy gold and later buy the farmland.
Moving now to this next viewer's question from Larry Welty. He's wanting to know what percentage of my silver investment should be in junk silver. And junk silver, just for our viewers who don't know, that's U.S. silver coinage before 1965.
I would say, it becomes a question of how many big multi-kilogram bars of silver do you want to buy? I mean, one of the popular units of silver is a 1,000-ounce bar. Well, it's 60 pounds. It's 30 kilos. You're not going to want to buy 30 kilos worth of junk silver. It becomes a question of how much loose silver do you want to buy versus how much giant bulk do you want to buy. I mean, if you've got $100,000, I would say buy $80,000 worth of bars, buy $10,000 worth of Morgan silver dollars, and buy a bunch of junk silver. I don't think junk silver is going to outperform Morgan silver dollars. Now, that's a collector item issue. So, I don't really know.
All right. Now, moving now here, we've covered a lot of questions about precious metals. Now, I'd like to discuss the questions now about really, they're more focused on the economic collapse that you see coming. Now, multiple viewers were wondering a similar thing. They were wondering, where's the best place to live when the collapse occurs?
Outside the United States to start, outside Europe in addition, not in any country that speaks English. That means it means Australia and New Zealand. Not any country that does significant banking with United States overlords like Wall Street telling Singapore what to do. You want to be somewhere where they don't hate Americans for all the past crimes, and there aren't many countries that qualify. For instance, will it be safe in Panama? Well, how many Americans know that during the Noriega War, which is a brief skirmish of only about 3 weeks, and I think it was 1985 or 86, how many Americans know that the U.S. military used laser weapons and killed 250 native Panamanians with laser weapon, leaving an 18-inch diameter puddle of human, not waste, but human matter in liquid form on the pavement? I've talked to people who saw the puddles 25 years ago. That was 2010 when I talked to them. So it was 25 years fresh in their memory. They actually said to me, it was 2 guys, they said, "We will never forget that." So where do you live? I don't know. How about a remote Polynesian island where they never even heard of Americans? How about living with turtles? That might be better, because any humans on the planet know that our government is scum. You want to be as far away from recognition of Americans, and you better speak a foreign language. Americans among the industrialized nations have the lowest proportion in their population speaking a second language. Why? Because we're a combination of arrogant and dumb. And I have a lot of respect for 10% of Americans, don't get me wrong. I noticed that 20 years ago, the high school requirements were made lax. This was in the 80s and 90s. It was made more lax. You could get through high school without a foreign language, and you can get through high school with 2 years of math. We're dumbing down our country through ridiculously lax requirements. It is essential to speak a foreign language. I had bad guidance from my dumbass counselor who told me, "No, French is much better, Jim." I was a freshman, my first week of school in high school, a little 14-year-old kid, skinny runt. I didn't know anything. And the guidance counselor said, "No, Jim, French is good. French is great. It's a big, important language for diplomacy." And I said, "Well, what about German and Spanish?" And she said, "Well, German's very difficult. I don't think you'd like it." I said, "Well, what about Spanish?" "Well, it's not useful." Oh, really? So that counselor did not anticipate that Latinos would overtake blacks in U.S. population and basically take over Texas and California in the South. So I am now struggling to learn Spanish, and I'm maybe 60%, 70% fluent, because I took the wrong language in French. Okay, we've got a lot of bad decisions in our educational system. Where to live? Where they tolerate gringos and forgive us for our bankers and government. That's where. And stay away from the English-speaking countries. You're not going to find peace in Australia. Sorry.
Now, I know for many people, learning a language, as you said, is very tough. But I guess, what is your perspective on what is the best way or resources that people can take advantage of to, learn another language? I mean, how are you doing it right now?
Well, first thing is you buy a dictionary, Elijah. I have met probably around 50 or 60 Americans here in the 10 years. And I don't go out of my way to meet them. I go out of my way to avoid them, because there are a lot of swindlers and government rats who got in trouble with the U.S. government and got themselves out of trouble by volunteering to be a government rat and mingling among the masses in Costa Rica. It's a lot more than what you might think. All right, so, I've got a friend named Keith, and I asked him, have you bought a dictionary? Do you have a dictionary? And he said, "No, I need to learn more. I need to learn more Spanish. I mean, I'd get by better." Yeah, maybe you should have bought a dictionary 22 years ago before you even got here. I bought a dictionary 3 months before I moved here. I started reading the Conversational Berlitz book before I got here. I don't know anybody who did that. Does that make me brilliant or just maybe not an idiot? I get tired of lazy people. I'm a student, and maybe I'm different because I'm a student and I enjoyed going to school, and I really didn't want to get out of school. I mean, I've got one joke. People have asked me, why'd you go after the doctorate? And I said, I don't know. I got a master's. I really didn't feel like leaving school. There were more courses I could take, and it would be interesting. Okay, but most people that I know here, they don't have a dictionary. Most gringos, Americans, they don't have any dictionary. I've asked a funny question to some of the locals here. Is a Canadian a gringo? And the answer I got was, only if he's an asshole. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist that joke. But, I mean, how do you go about learning a foreign language? Well, you might need some help. So some people kind of think of it as going on a diet. If I buy a book on the diet, I won't have to do any work, and I can just lose weight because I bought the book. No, you buy a dictionary, you buy a conversational book, you buy maybe the Rosetta Stone. That's a very good method for learning a foreign language, Rosetta Stone. Costs, I think, about $160. At least 3 years ago, it was $160 for Spanish. I know some people who did well at it. I know a guy who learned a lot of Spanish with 12 tapes from the State Department, and they're not available anymore. He bought them about 15 years ago and lent them to me, and I went through a few of them. But the best way is to practice with people. I mean, if you've got a Latino buddy who's bilingual in New York City or in Houston, Texas, or in Los Angeles, take him out for dinner and ask him, can we just practice some Spanish? If you don't practice it, if you don't read it, if you don't feed the system, you're not going to learn it. You can't buy a dictionary and just put it over there in the corner and say, well, by gum, I've done something. No, you've done nothing. All you've done is bought something and not opened it. Unless you open it and look at new words. I keep a list. Let me just read off some things. Resplandecer. I wrote that down. It means to shine, stand out. Reflejar. It means to reflect. Arrebatar. It's to snatch and grab. A friend of mine had her purse stolen. She said, un hombre arrebató mi bolso. Okay. In extremo, to the extreme. Darle la lata, to be a pest. That's slang. Saciar, to sate. These are just in the last couple weeks. Words that I choose to learn. If you don't work at it, if you don't invest in it, not going to happen. All right, let's move on.
All right. Well, moving on now to this next viewer's question. Francesco C. says he's an entrepreneur and toying with the idea of doing a fuel economy modification to vehicles. And he asks, when the imports fail during the dollar collapse, how bad will the oil-gas crisis be?
I think the oil and gas prices will remain low. If you call that a crisis, yeah, it's a crisis for the companies, not a crisis for the consumer. I'm not really too concerned about the oil and gas prices right now. I mean, if we go to a new dollar, we might see a recovery. I mean, we might see a rise in gasoline prices. It's a good point. Maybe I should think about this more, because if we're going to reindustrialize and get the economy going, and we do it we start with a new dollar that's devalued, we're going to see consumer prices increase for anything that's not produced locally, domestically. So whatever we import, like Toyota and car parts from Asia, it'll all cost a lot more. It'll be an encouragement for bringing back the car industry to Detroit. Why the hell did we leave Detroit? Dumb move. Guaranteed problem in the future, and the future's now. So we will see higher energy prices with the new dollar. We will, and there's no getting around it. But, I don't concern myself right now with that, because we need a whole lot more than just dealing. What we can do, make some government subsidies so people can afford gasoline? No, what we need to do is to get industry back to the United States. We need to encourage foreign investment of industry in the United States so we have more people working. We should be less concerned about people paying for gasoline than we should be for getting new jobs in line. You get the jobs in line, the gasoline prices will take care of themselves. You need to increase our industrial base. We need to increase our working people. We have a 24 or 25% unemployment in the United States right now. It's depression level. Obama committed a real slick move, little shyster that he is, a squatter in the White House. He ended the 99-month extension, 99-week extension for unemployment, the unemployment insurance. Therefore, people dropped off the rolls, and the unemployment rate went down. What a success! He got tired of keeping the unemployment rate up from calling unemployed people unemployed. I mean, everything about the U.S. government is ass backwards and stupid and corrupt. I hate every policy that we've got. You name me a government policy, and I'll explain how it's stupid and corrupt. Starting with food stamps. We got a whole, 20 million, 40 million people on food stamps and government entitlements? Have they forgot the old rule in the Bible? You don't work, you don't eat. I like that rule.
Now, besides oil and gas, let's move on now to another energy source that, everyone in the United States depends on pretty much everyone, power grids. This viewer wants to know, you've talked about a Mad Max scenario in America after we have a currency or economic collapse. So do you think the power grids will go down during that time?
If and when we go to a new dollar, you can expect a wide range of problems across the U.S. entire economy. The way I like to describe it is the entire supply chain is going to be disrupted. And part of the supply chain is the energy grid. But more simply put, whatever depends on the dollar with imported supply, that's going to be in trouble immediately. So you have to ask the question, translate the question, will the electricity grid be in trouble because it has foreign dependence in a supply chain? And maybe some that are oil-fired burners, maybe some will be in trouble. The coal-fired burners will not, because that's largely domestic. The gas-fired burners will not be in trouble. The gas-fired turbines not be in trouble. We got lots and lots of natural gas, and we supply half our needs for oil. So some electric grids, if they're foreign supplied, might be in trouble. And that's where I think you're going to see trouble with the electrical grid. Whatever is foreign dependent.
All right, now moving to this question from Heath Miller. She asks, if negative interest rate policy comes to America, will this trigger bank runs?
Well, yeah.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Click here to subscribe for free to be notified when the rest of this interview is released. Or click over here to watch the full interview now.